Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Rodriguez, a meteorologist here at the National Weather Service office in Melbourne, Florida. I'm going to be talking to you about the upcoming 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. Looking back to 2020, it was a record-breaking year as we experienced 30 named tropical systems across the Atlantic Basin, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. Of these storms, 14 of them became hurricanes and 7 became major hurricanes. This map shows the tracks of those 30 tropical systems and hurricanes that moved across the basin last year. The most powerful storm to hit the United States, causing the most amount of damage, was Hurricane Laura, which struck southwestern Louisiana. And here this chart shows all of the counties and parishes across the United States that had some kind of tropical storm, hurricane, or storm surge watch warning issued at some point throughout the year. So as you can see, basically everybody was under threat from a tropical storm or a hurricane at some point in the season last year. For us here in Central Florida, we had to deal with 2 tropical systems, though the impacts to this area was minimal. First was Hurricane Isaias, which passed to our east, and that produced sustained tropical storm force winds along the barrier islands, mainly from Cape Canaveral south. And it also produced tropical storm force gusts across the rest of our east central Florida coast. Then we had to deal with Tropical Storm Eta in November. That brought tropical storm force winds to far northern areas of Lake County and far northern Volusia County. Now looking on to the seasonal outlook for 2021, so we have seen that the Atlantic waters are still currently warmer than they normally are, and it's likely to remain that way. So warmer ocean temperatures means more fuel for storms to strengthen and intensify. Now the seasonal forecast for 2021 from NOAA is calling for another above average season. And I want to reiterate what the average is, the new averages that came out of 14 named tropical storms, 7 of which become hurricanes and 3 become major hurricanes. So that's just the average. But what we can say is that we are not expecting the historical levels of activity that we saw last year. It will be an above average season most likely, but not to the level that we saw last year. And it's important to note that this is not a forecast for landfalls. So preparedness is always key. Preparedness now before the season starts. Get everything ready to go. Will go a long way in making sure that we can all get through this 2020 season with minimal impacts. And here's the official forecast from the National Weather Service and NOAA, calling for 13 to 20 named tropical storms, 6 to 10 which become hurricanes, and 3 to 5 which become major hurricanes. And here I'm pulling up the averages, which is 14, 7, and 3 for the respective categories. And here is the list of names, the 21 storm names that we have for the 2021 year. And it's also important to follow official and trusted weather sources. That includes us here at the National Weather Service in Melbourne and the National Hurricane Center. We can follow us on our social media platforms and also follow your local county officials and emergency management for St. Lucie County and the city of Port St. Lucie. And you can also follow your local broadcast media as they will provide you with excellent weather and safety information as well. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the products that come from our office here in Melbourne and the National Hurricane Center. These are called Hurricane Threats and Impacts Graphic. Now, these are really great because they're going to tell you what you need to prepare for. So as we all know, hurricanes shift and wobble around in their track. It doesn't always move in a straight line how we predict it will. And so these graphics take into account that historical error and uncertainty. And it tells you kind of what is the reasonable worst case scenario that I can expect in my area based on the current information that's available. So we had 4 storms that have been retired from 2019 and 2020. I'm sure everybody remembers Hurricane Dorian back in 2019, Category 5 hurricane that struck the far northwestern Bahama Islands, as well as from last year, Hurricane Laura struck Louisiana, Hurricane Eta, and Hurricane Iota, both of which struck as major hurricanes in Central America that caused significant damage. The National Hurricane Center has also started issuing the tropical weather outlooks on May 15th. So that's already begun for this season. They're issued 4 times a day, And they basically look at potential areas that we could see tropical storm development. So something new as well for 2021 is that the Greek alphabet has been discontinued. There were several reasons that this was done, and a secondary list has now been created. So if we do get to the last letter in the list for this year, which is W, and then that storm gets used, there's a secondary list of names that will be used instead of the Greek alphabet. And so I want to talk a little bit about hurricane myths and truths. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the cone of uncertainty, the National Weather Service forecast track. And if we see a cone like this and we say, well, we're not in the cone, that means we're going to be okay. That is not always the case. Remember that the cone is only looking at the center of that hurricane or tropical storm. And historically, the center only stays within that cone 2 out of 3 times. Also keep in mind that hurricanes are not points. They are very large systems that are hundreds of miles across at times, and the impacts can stretch across a very large area. And then another myth is putting duct tape on the window will protect your home from any flying debris. Again, that is another hurricane myth that we should not be following. This is an antiquated advice back from the 70s, and it actually does more harm than it does to protect. The better choices are to put up hurricane shutters or plywood, or to get impact-resistant glass on your exterior windows. And a third myth here is that when we do evacuations, when local county emergency management in Florida says it's time to evacuate, that's because they're thinking about the winds of the tropical storm, and that's why people should evacuate. Well, that's another myth. Actually, the number one concern and what drives local evacuation decisions is the storm surge. So that is the primary reason why county officials call for evacuations of certain areas. Now, I want to state that storm surge is the abnormal rise of water above what is normally dry ground. And storm surge can go significant distances inland. So just because you're not along the immediate coastline doesn't mean that you are not at threat from storm surge. Areas along rivers and canals can also be susceptible to storm surge if those waterways connect to the open ocean. In conclusion here, don't let any past experiences dictate your future actions. It's always important to plan and prepare for what's going to happen this year. Every year is different and every storm is different. Now is the time that we should all take to prepare, to get ready for the season, so that way if we are at threat at some point, everybody has a hurricane preparedness plan, everybody knows what to do, and everybody has all the resources they need to be able to get through the storm safely. Thank you for joining.